From the little leagues
to the pros.
This is your weekly sports show.
Welcome to the Shutter Sports Podcast.
Take a seat at the table as we discuss.
Hello and welcome to the Shutter Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Cam Stirling, joined by Josh Alderman and Finn Noel. Today, we're going over the NBA offseason, which teams made the best moves, which teams made the worst moves, and taking a deeper look into some of the biggest moves we've seen this offseason. So I think there's one glaring start to this podcast, and it's the legendary Kevin Durant going to the Houston Rockets. For most of you listeners, this is going to be pretty dated news, but we really haven't been able to go into a deep dive for how Phoenix came out with this trade and how Houston came out with this trade. So, guys, what are your thoughts?
I guess I can start things off if you want, Josh. I haven't been on a podcast in so long. I'm a little bit rusty. I'll get the rust off here. Yeah, it's been a while since we've talked NBA. I guess you guys talked about it during the draft, but this offseason there's been a lot of moves going on. We were just talking about it before we hit record. It's been mostly role players going around this offseason, but the one big move was Kevin Durant headed over to the Rockets, and I want to talk about this more from the Rocket side than the Suns side because I think it was pretty obvious to most people that KD was going to be leaving the Suns just based on how their season ended. And for the Rockets, man, I'm really happy with this move because if you look at their team, their one glaring weakness, of course, they were the 2 seed, was that they didn't have a go-to shot creator, and that's obviously something Kevin Durant is one of the best in the league at, one of the best ever at. So going into playoff games, I think the boost that he can bring and like being that offensive guy is going to be super helpful, and I think they're contenders this year.
I believe they really hoped that Jalen Green would flourish into that shot creator they were looking for, but sadly his ball movement wasn't there, his consistency wasn't there, so I think packaging him in the trade was the right move. I also really liked it for Phoenix. They didn't go out and try and replace Kevin Durant because everybody knows that's impossible. So getting 6 second rounders and going pure draft capital for them to kind of build their own team out of this trade, it was a really smart move because second rounders, people look at them as kind of unsubstantial and like not incredible value, but when you're looking at where this Phoenix Suns team is right now and the lack of depth they have and the lack of creativity their lineup has, I think building their own lineup from here on out was a smart move.
I think it comes down to not only is it the draft picks, it's the players that came in the trade as well. Like Green, Dylan Brooks, and coming out of the picks that you acquired, like Malawak. That's massive for a team to get more depth from trading, just one guy. That's massive for a team that's kind of sort of in a rebuild, not really sure where they're at. I think they're trying to find an identity, and by making a trade like that, it allows them to create one basically from the ground up.
Yeah, and after they let go of Bradley Beal to the Clippers, I think they're fully in that direction. I'm really glad that Devin Booker's sticking around. I think he fits the image of a lifelong player for the team that drafted him, and I think he wants to be in Phoenix. I think he wants to win in Phoenix, so building around him and keeping Booker around was a smart move too. But I'm really glad Phoenix is going in the direction that they are, but Houston looks dangerous.
Yeah, I mean the Western Conference is so tough that it's hard to say what seed they'll finish off with. But if you look at their team last year, you can only say they've improved. They got rid of Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green, but not only did they bring in Kevin Durant, they bring in Clint Capella, who we know has played on the Rockets before and was successful before. He might be a little older now, but they also brought in Dorian Finney-Smith from the Lakers, so they've improved their team in every aspect. So
Not to mention
I
they
think
kept
you got it.
not to mention they kept around some of those big pieces like Van Vliet, Adams.
They
So
got Van Vliet
really
on like 24 million a year. That's such a steal.
all
Kidding?
for cheap. Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah, so I think they're probably set to be one of the contenders. Although, like I said, the Western Conference is just so stacked this year. And something I wanted to add on is that we were talking about the Suns there. We talked about building around Devin Booker. Devin Booker just re-signed to a 2-year
Mhm.
extension, so he's really committed to being on this team now. And he said, I think,
Officially
Matt
the
Ish, we have.
highest paid per year player in the NBA.
Is he really? Is that,
Yeah.
Really?
gosh,
Yeah.
deserved, well deserved for staying
Very.
around so long.
Yeah, not the biggest contract, but on a per year basis, he's the highest paid player in the NBA.
Well deserved.
All
Very
right,
well
now
deserved.
onto the I believe the second biggest trade, which came pretty much out of left field. You guys remember the Desmond Bain trade at the beginning of the offseason to the Orlando Magic? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that one? 'Cause that one really sprung into our laps.
Yeah, that was out of absolutely nowhere. Most people weren't considering the offseason to have gotten going yet. And then all of a sudden, boop, Shams notification. We've got Desmond Bain, who, wasn't an all-star, but is on the verge of being an all-star every single season that he plays. So that's a big move, not only for the Magic. I'm sure we'll talk about the Magic side of things. But man, I think the Memphis Grizzlies got a massive package back. They get KCP, who's was just a few years ago one of the best 3-and-D players in the entire league, and they got something like 4 first rounders as well.
Yeah,
That
including
draft
number
capital is
16
ridiculous.
this year. I can't remember who they drafted with number 16 this year.
I forgot his name. Everyone's calling him one of the best players in the draft, though. Um,
I know
oh
we
gosh,
talked about this on our draft podcast. It's in there somewhere.
he is
Young Hansen, who went to the Portland Trailblazers afterwards. So they ended up trading that pick, which I don't mind. They got four in that package, but
and they got back in they basically they traded with the Trailblazers and they got Cedric Coward like in the
right.
actual
Hmm.
draft with their pick. That's the guy I was thinking of. He
Yeah,
played
I
barely
think
any
I think
games in college.
Memphis has a lot of youth on their team already, and Cedric, I believe, is a 5-year player coming out of university. I think he dealt with some injuries last year, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken, but he was one of the um most expected prospects, and like you really know what you're getting out of them. So I think that adds some contrast to their fairly unproven lineup that they have right now, especially now that they gave up Desmond Bain. So although I don't know if Desmond Bain is worth 5 first round picks, we've seen that a lot recently of like players that you have control over get those amount of picks, like with Mikal Bridges and I can't think of another one right now, but we saw that with Mikal Bridges having like 3 years left on his contract, and that's why Brooklyn gave up that many picks for him. And Desmond Bain was the same situation. They've been dying to get a trustworthy two guard ever since Evan Fournier left in the late 2010s. So they finally filled that gap, and KCP and Cole Anthony aren't pieces that really fit into their direction right now, anyways. And um, I think it's a win-win for both teams, to be honest.
I think if you look at the Magic's offseason as a whole, they've really come out on the winning side, essentially swapping KCP, Cole Anthony, and Gary Harris for Desmond Bain and Tyus Jones gives them more shot creation and backcourt spacing, two things that they were desperately missing last year. So yeah, KCP pretty good. Cole Anthony, I mean, he got waived the second he got to the Grizzlies. That just kind of shows you where he stands. Gary Harris, overpaid vet. So swapping out those guys for Tyus Jones and Desmond Bain of all players, insane. It's a big, big pickup and a big boost for a young team on the rise.
If you look at the Eastern Conference this year, there are so many teams that are not necessarily out of it, but definitely not as big of contenders as they would have been if they were fully healthy. You look at the Boston Celtics, who just obviously Tatum is injured, and they just got rid of two of their starters. So I'm sure we'll talk about that later. And then the Pacers, Halliburton is injured. The Bucks, Damian Lillard's gone again. We'll
Don't
talk
know where
about
the
that as well.
76ers are standing either. It's really a
Exactly. So
toss-up.
the East is wide open, and I think the Magic saw that opportunity and they said, "Hey, we're going to pounce on this. We know that this guy can boost our offense." And all of a sudden, I think they could be a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference.
Well, leading into your Celtics banter there, Finn, we can talk about the Celtics and we can talk about the team who took one of their players who might be an East contender as well, and the Atlanta Hawks, who had a massive trade deadline or off season as well. The Atlanta Hawks look freaking good.
They really do. If we're gonna rank best team in the offseason, I think my favorite team might be the Atlanta Hawks. And it's funny enough because literally last year at this time, I said, guys, I think it's over. I think Trae Young's gonna be gone next year. And somehow my words got shoved back into my mouth. The Atlanta Hawks are looking like, again, they might be much like the Magic, a top four team in the Eastern Conference. They've made so many
Yeah.
little moves, not
I
necessarily trading for a
completely
big
agree.
star,
They
but
got
all these little
Kristaps
moves.
for fairly cheap. I believe what was it, like 2 second rounders? And
Georges Niang
or
and
Georges
some
Niang in two
seconds. Yeah.
seconds. Yeah.
That's nothing.
They traded 13 for 23 to the Pelicans, which got them a first round pick, as everybody knows that New Orleans might have overpaid on that one. And they got, in my opinion, a lottery projected player in Austin Newell who will immediately fit in. They're getting Jalen Johnson back from his injury. Oh my goodness. This Atlanta Hawks team is looking crazy.
And I think going back to Finn's point, all around, this might be the best offseason. Nothing but improvements all across the board. You got Luke Kennard, Nikhil Alexander Walker, on top of the
Yeah.
names you've already mentioned, Cam. And then you add Tingus Pingus to the mix, shot blocking, floor stretching big man that you just didn't have last year. And then the most lopsided trade of the year, a 2026 first rounder and number 23 for the 13th overall pick. So should the Bucks or the Pelicans slip up, the Hawks might be picking near the top of the draft next year with that unprotected first rounder. I mean, yeah, Tingus Pingus, just the cherry on top of a fantastic offseason for the Hawks.
Yeah, I can't describe enough how angry I was that the Pelicans made that trade. I'm not even a Pelicans fan, you know. But if I was a Pelicans fan, I would be so upset at their front
I
office.
also really didn't like the Derek Queen pick either, because Derek Queen is not a modern player. We were talking about the Raptors possibly picking Derek Queen and Kaman Malawak to get a big, but Derek Queen is a 6'9" center that doesn't play defense. He isn't very mobile, and I don't know if the that trade package was worth Derek Queen for the New Orleans Pelicans. And yeah, the Pelicans are they got to start building around Zion, but it's not going to be this year.
Yeah, we're reaching the point where you start to think maybe Zion's gone off that team soon.
Yeah.
They're already moved on from the Brandon Ingram era of things. CJ McCollum left this year as well, so it's a bit of a shakeup this year. And considering what happened last year with Trae Young, I don't want to say anything is concrete, but yeah, if we're talking about worst off seasons in the league, I definitely think Pelicans are on that list. They did bring in Jordan Poole and Kevon Looney, who I think are two solid players that can help out. But at the end of the day, Brandon Ingram gone at the trade deadline, and you make a bad trade at the draft, even with your injury history. They've been injured and had to pick high the last couple years. So yeah, just not a great offseason for them, in my opinion. What other big moves? What other moves did you guys find significant? Because there's been, a few mini moves around the
Yeah.
league, but not
I
really many
I
big
got
ones, as I
one
mentioned.
right off the dome. I think I talked to you, Finn, about it the day that it happened, but one of my
Ah,
favorite players in the NBA, Jay Huff. I think he is the most slept on big man in the entire NBA, and I'm gonna give out some Jay Huff propaganda for you viewers. The Indiana Pacers got Jay Huff from the Memphis Grizzlies for 2 second rounders right as Miles Turner left. Jay Huff's per 36 minute stats are better than Miles Turner's. So when Jay Huff gets a starting spot on this empty Indiana Pacers team without Halliburton, Jay Huff is going to be a borderline all-star. Jay Huff is averaging 15 points compared to Miles Turner's 15 points per 36. Jay Huff is averaging 6 rebounds compared to Miles Turner's 6 rebounds per 36. Jay Huff is averaging 2 assists per Turner's 1 assist per 36. Both of them are averaging 1 steal per 36, and Miles Turner averages 2 blocks per 36. Jay Huff averaging 2.7 blocks per 36. And the field goal percentage, Jay Huff averaging 51.5% to Turner's 48.1%. Jay Huff averaging 41% from three to Miles Turner's 39. So every single stat per 36 minutes, Jay Huff is slightly edges Turner out, except for like a half a point. So I think once Jay Huff gets a starting lineup spot on this Indiana Pacers team, he's gonna be the exact same caliber or better than Miles Turner.
I want to hear Josh's thoughts on this because Cam and I talked about it already.
I will admit, not the biggest fan of the Pacers letting Miles Turner go, but admittedly, Jay Huff just wasn't a recognizable name to me. Kind of flew under the radar, like one of those you
I know he's
shrug
a
and
former
oh,
Wizard, so
cool.
Finn was on the
Of
Jay Huff
course, of
train from the
course.
Of
beginning.
course.
So
Yeah, but it's one of those things where you just shrug and like, okay, cool. But hearing those stats, it's kind of turned me around on Jay Huff. He
And
might be.
I don't know if you've seen the Jay Huff workouts with I think it was like Clay Thompson or somebody on Instagram. He's
I can't say that I
explosive
have.
too.
It's a pretty niche thing to
Jay
find.
Huff has some explosivity to him. Like he has been adding some rim running to his game, and with the amount of shot blocking he does already, like he was top five in blocks per game for the first half of the season with the Memphis Grizzlies before they started Zach Edey. And I was loving it because Jay Huff is I still believe Jay Huff's one of the most slept on players.
And if
Yeah,
especially if you
honestly,
look at the sorry, Josh, if you look at the Pacers centers lineup, they lost Miles Turner, Isaiah
Yeah.
Jackson, and James Wiseman were both injured all of last year with season-ending injuries. So looking at the next year, you've got two rusty guys coming back into your center rotation and Miles Turner gone. It's not a very good look. Obviously, the Pacers probably aren't looking to contend because Halliburton is injured. But either way, you still want to compete. They're the Pacers. They're probably going to push for a 5 to 6 seed. And it wasn't looking good in their center rotation. But now they bring in Jay Huff, who's healthy. And I think re-signing Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, both players that I like, have made their center rotation almost better than it was with Miles Turner in the first place.
I don't
yeah,
mind
that's
that take.
exactly what I was gonna say.
I really like James Wiseman. I haven't given up on him yet.
I think James Wiseman just needs to add some lateral quickness to his game and like actually hustle, but he's just so injury prone. It's really tough.
I agree with that. Um, if we
Um,
are to move on to a important move or at least a notable move,
I think one of the biggest one was with your Wizards, Finn. Let's talk
Ooh.
about that three-team CJ McCollum deal.
I like some Wizards talk. Do you want me to talk about how I feel about it as
Yeah,
as the
go
guy
ahead.
on the Jordan Poole side?
This is your
Go
team.
for it.
All right. At the end of the day, the Wizards made that move to dump salary. If you look at
Right.
their contracts, CJ McCollum is going to expire, Jordan Poole is not. And I think the Wizards sort of realized like, hey, he was our leading scorer last year. He is talented, but he's not going to be our guy moving forward. And he's making a lot of money. And as a young team, we want to have as much salary cap as possible. So we shipped him off to bring in somebody that A is a veteran and can help our team out for, a year or two, or however long he stays. And then basically get more money for future years. So it sucks seeing him leave because he was such a fan favorite. I know some people around the internet like to clown Jordan Poole, but he was a fan favorite around DC. So it sucks, but at the end of the day, I think it was for the best.
I really like the Cam Whitmore edition as well. We were talking about it before the pod, but Cam Whitmore is another really slept on player that I think just hasn't gotten the chance in the loaded bench of the Houston Rockets. And the Rockets just got a couple second round picks in Mojave King in in this trade. So that's not a lot of return for Cam Whitmore, who they didn't really need in their rotation, all things considered, but I think the Wizards got a hidden gem, and I don't think it's a stretch to say Cam Whitmore is going to be the leading scorer on the Washington Wizards next year.
And it is safe to say, from a financial perspective, all of those deals, everything going on at once, massive, massive for the Wizards for next year.
Yeah.
Getting rid of McCollum or getting McCollum in, getting rid of Jordan Poole's like 2 year, $66 million deal,
Yeah, they
flipping Kelly
also brought
Olynyk.
in Kelly. Yeah. They also brought in
Yeah,
another veteran in Kelly Olynyk, which I think the Wizards always need.
Well, he's gone now, actually. We
he
What?
flipped him to the
got
Spurs.
flipped to the Spurs. That's
Oh,
what I was saying.
Breaking news, Josh Alderman.
breaking news from Josh Alderman.
Yeah, he's
So,
gone.
yeah, he's gone to the Spurs, which,
Kelly
big addition
Olynyk
there,
just
veteran
fits the
leadership.
Wizards, man. That sucks.
Kelly Olynyk is hated by our fan base because of that
Seriously?
2017 series we had against Boston. I think he was super scrappy and stuff. So the Wizards Twitter was going crazy when we
He
moved him.
just feels like a Washington Wizard.
Well, he's not anymore. And with his contract off the books and like all the deals that they've made this offseason, in total, the Wizards have cleared around $30 million from their books next year,
That's unreal.
opening up an astounding $100 million for them to just toss around
Mhm.
next summer. That is unbelievable for a team on the rise.
Josh, this is music to my ears.
Giannis to the
I love
Wizards.
the Wizards propaganda. And if
Giannis to
I
the
mean I've
Wizards.
Confirmed.
oh my gosh, imagine. I mean, I've talked about the Wizards GM Will Dawkins for a long time now, ever since we've signed him essentially, and constantly reference the fact that he was the OKC Thunder assistant GM to Sam Presti before this, and he is so obviously making the exact same rebuild as Sam Presti did with the Thunder. We're just waiting patiently on our guy, because obviously the Thunder stumbled into Shea Gilgeous-Alexander very early, and that definitely not stunted, boosted the growth of their rebuild. But the Wizards are doing the exact same thing, man. Finding athletic guys with a lot of potential, and just freeing up a lot of money, getting a lot of draft picks. We've made a ton of moves for draft picks, and just waiting on a guy. And I think maybe Trey Johnson's that guy. I really like him, or maybe we wait for this 2026 draft, which is also set to be very very stacked. Once we get a guy, or once I should stop saying we, once the Wizards get a guy, um, I think they'll be a contender in the East in 5 years or so.
Now, I think from last year, after seeing the Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey straight up, we've seen a lot of one for ones this offseason that immediately help each team. And thought we'd make a little segment here for one for ones to cover some of the really interesting one for ones that we've seen this offseason. First one we saw was Drew Holiday for Anthony Simons. And for Anthony Simons to the Celtics and Drew Holiday to the Blazers.
I
Man,
mean, getting in on that one, getting rid of Holiday, one of the best defenders in the league. Offense is a little lacking, but you cannot deny his defensive abilities. Taking him away from the Celtics is a big loss, all in the name of cost cutting, but getting Simons in lessens that impact. Now, Simons, in contrast, doesn't quite have the defensive abilities of Holiday, but has better offensive abilities, can shoot the three better, can distribute better, can really open up the floor a lot more. And that it works out for both teams. Like the Blazers, they're a veteran led team. Getting Holiday on board, like that is big, but at the same time, he needs to prove this year that he is worth the cost of the younger, cheaper, and more offensive minded Simons.
yeah. I saw rumors that the Trailblazers might release Drew Holiday to begin with, but I think Holiday adds a lot to this Blazers team with how much youth they have. I think Scoot Henderson started off a little rockier than we thought he would, and having Dame come back and Drew Holiday come in, I think those are great veteran point guard minds that can influence Scoot in the right way and point Tumani Kamara in the right direction and Shaden Sharp in the right direction and Duop Reith and just add some spirit to that Trailblazers lineup that has been lacking since the Dame days. But I also think the Celtics getting Anthony Simons is an instant upgrade. It keeps them somewhat competitive with Tatum out and with Porzingis gone. I don't think it's a game-changing move for the Celtics, but I think getting a younger point guard to replace their older point guard is an easy upgrade.
Yeah, I think the Celtics did well with what they had to do going into this offseason. I think it was more just the front office said, "Hey, we're clearly not contenders this year. Money is going to be a little bit tight. So let's just get rid of, we talked about Tingus Pingus leaving earlier, and now they're getting rid of Holiday. So it was a money saving move. They got back some solid talent for an aging Drew Holiday on a big contract. So I think they did. Brad Stevens did well with what he could, and the Blazers are now sneakily one of the best defensive teams in the league.
Yeah, we saw another wing for wing swap in going from east to west in Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. and a first round pick, unprotected first. Some people say MPJ might be better than Cam Johnson. Some people think Cam Johnson has a bigger impact. So, what do you guys think of that return?
I um I'll let you speak first, Josh. I have a lot to say.
So kind, so courteous. I really think this is a big win for the Nets. Picking up, Porter Jr. is a big, big get for a younger, rebuilding team. I mean, with the numbers he's putting up, not all-star level, but solid hand. Like averaging close to 19, 20 points a game is nothing to scoff at. I think in this rebuilding Nets team, he can either be a centerpiece that the team not necessarily builds around, but builds with, or he's just trade bait at the deadline and they get something good for him. Either way, the Nets win in the end.
I like that take. I do like that take, and the Nets will be a fun team to watch. I think with Porter and D'Angelo Russell now, maybe they'll get back to that 2019 era of Brooklyn. But if you look at the Denver side, obviously I think talent wise, Cam Johnson is a downgrade from Michael Porter Jr., but I think Cam Johnson fits on the Denver Nuggets
I
so much better.
completely agree.
And if you look at the Nuggets overall, I know we're talking about one for one trades, but the freaking Denver Nuggets had the best offseason in the league, I think, other than the Atlanta Hawks. And they might be my number one contender in the league next year because adding back Bruce Brown, adding in Cam Johnson, adding in Tim Hardaway Jr., and they finally have a backup center for Jokic and Jonas Valanciunas. All of these moves have just been the thing that Michael Malone was waiting for the Denver Nuggets front office to do for years. And as soon as they fire the front office, and unfortunately fire Michael Malone as well, they get in all these guys that I think will surround Jokic very, very well. And I think Cam Johnson, with his spot up shooting ability and his ability to attack the rack, probably fits on the team better than Michael Porter Jr. would. He's, I think, built to be a go-to guy.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I like it. It's, again, going back to what we mentioned earlier, a lot of these one for one swaps works out for both teams in the end. Like going down the line, like I said, this is probably going to end up being good for the Nets. Whether they keep Porter Jr. or not is a different question entirely. But Johnson is an upgrade. There's no denying that. Both teams really came out on the better side of this trade.
Not often you see a win-win deal in the NBA, but I think this might be one.
Came close to it. All right, another one for one swap that really caught people's attention. Lonzo Ball for Okoro. What do you guys think about that one?
Oh man, that's so Finn knowledge here. I was a Cavs fan before I became a Wizards fan. For reasons there I don't want to delve into, but so I always cheer for the Cavs a little bit on the side. And seeing Lonzo Ball head to this team, I think is going to be so helpful for them. It sucks that they did lose Ty Jerome. They had to. Money was just too big of an issue for them.
Jerome played way too well for the money they wanted to pay him.
Mhm.
Exactly. They were gonna go way over the second apron if they had to pay him back. But getting in Lonzo Ball is a really really nice deal for them. Giving up Isaac Okoro, who is their project guy that worked out a little bit, but wasn't ready to compete on a championship team yet. And obviously that's what they're looking to do is win the championship. So bringing in Lonzo Ball, who's shown that he can lead a team to the number one seed. If you guys remember when he was on the Bulls and healthy last time, they were the one seed.
That's my biggest what if of all time because Lonzo looked like a top 10, maybe top 5 point guard that year.
He
He
was
was
ridiculous.
one of the most well-rounded players I've ever seen was Chicago Bulls Lonzo Ball.
I
The
think
only weakness to his game was his three-pointer, and he shot over 40% that year. It was ridiculous.
he was so fun to watch. And I
Yeah,
think even if we get 50% of that Lonzo Ball on the Cavs, as a sixth man, like I think he'll lead their bench unit very, very well. He'll add so much needed defense, I think, to their roster in the backcourt. Obviously, their front court is fantastic defensively, but their backcourt defense will get better. And that's something that teams were taking advantage of in the playoffs last year, sort of attacking Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland at the top of the key.
very
So
much so,
getting
yeah.
Lonzo Ball in there is going to be so helpful for the Cavs.
I also think this springboards Okoro a little bit, giving him a wide open team in the Chicago Bulls with no real direction yet. I think he could find himself a little bit more with the Bulls than backing up DeAndre Hunter on a loaded Cavs squad. So I think the fifth overall pick is still in him. I think if he gets the ball in his hands a little bit more, he could improve on the offensive side. We know he's a great defensive threat, but I could see him turning into an OG and an OB level player and like a go-to 3 and D guy for a contender if he takes the chance on the Bulls and develops a little bit.
I think that's the thing with project players is there's only so much belief you can put in. I don't think we've seen enough from Isaac Okoro to show that he is going to turn out to be one of those players. Like on a good team like that Cavs team, he's the ninth, 10th man on the bench. Now moving to a Bulls team that doesn't have a direction, that doesn't have any kind of, real focus or spirit right now could springboard his career. But as one of those like unknown project type players, that can either make or break his development and his career. And I'm just worried that the way that the Bulls are right now, that's not going to be, a safe landing spot for him. That's not going to be the place where he can grow and develop as a player, become the starter that people envisioned him to be. I'm just a little worried about him.
Yeah, it's never good to be in Bulls purgatory. I didn't think about that side, but it's important to think about, the culture of teams that players are going to, especially project players. There's been teams like the Raptors and the Heat that have been notoriously good at bringing up guys like that, but the Bulls maybe aren't that. So I guess we'll have to see how his mental, his not his mental, his mentality, sorry, works in that Bulls culture.
Well, I believe that is all we have for today. Any final thoughts for this NBA offseason, boys?
I think rapid, lightning round, go down the line, give me your best, give me your worst off seasons, and in a sentence or two, why?
Well, J Huff is my favorite offseason move. Indiana Pacers made a smart one with that, but I really like the direction Phoenix went. I think adding Mark Williams, which I don't think we got to, was a great move. Making him and Kaman Malawak an instant duo for the center position, and I really like that they're finally building their own team instead of going out and getting stars. As far as the worst move goes, uh, I mean, the Celtics are like my only option because of how they ship their players out for such limited amount of assets. I get the direction they're going with Tatum out. They obviously don't want to compete. They want a higher pick, and that is very understandable but with how many sheer win-win moves we've seen, um, I think the Boston Celtics or the New Orleans Pelicans, I really didn't like the Derek Queen trade either.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Pelicans as well. For the most part, there's not a team that really had a horrible offseason. I mean, the Sixers lost a couple of their young guys, and you want to be you want to get some youth in the Philadelphia as of right now, and obviously the Suns lost Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, so they're bad too. But I think I talked about this already. Denver Nuggets and Atlanta Hawks. Those are my two big teams.
Yeah, I really have to agree that the Hawks had a fantastic offseason, definitely near the top of the pack. Clippers, scary if they stay
Clippers are the
healthy.
entire 2015 All-Star team.
Yeah, like that is the big thing. If they stay healthy,
Yeah.
they're going to be dangerous. Like John Collins, the power forward that you just didn't have last year, big addition.
Hmm.
Brooke Lopez pairing up with Zubak, that is a deadly big man rotation that
I
is
wanted
up
Brooke
there with
Lopez
the
to the
best.
Raptors, man. He would have fit
Oof.
perfectly.
I mean, re-signing Harden, adding Bradley Beal, and letting Chris Paul retire with the team that he grew
Yeah.
up with. Big, big stuff.
It's
And
going to be
again,
a really
if
cool team to watch with all
yes,
the
that's a
old
fun team.
All-Stars. Yeah.
And then you add in, Kawhi just casually into the mix. That is a fun team on paper if they stay healthy. So I'm surprised we haven't mentioned this already. The Sacramento Kings flying under the radar with a dumpster fire of an offseason. Dennis Schroeder at 32 years old, almost 33, is not worth 3 years, $44 million. Bringing in Saric for essentially to replace Valanciunas sucks. And
Very
you
much.
haven't gotten a backup center that you desperately need. And the ugly nail in the coffin of this horrendous offseason for the Kings, bringing back Scott Perry. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, don't worry. I'll remind you of the 2017 offseason that he led the charge on. He brought in 40-year-old Vince Carter, 38-year-old Zach Randolph, and 32-year-old George Hill, all in the same offseason for big money contracts. And look where that got the Kings. Enough said.
Air Canada, baby.
Mic
Still had
drop.
it in them.
That is you know what? I didn't even think about the Kings
Because
as a bad
nobody thinks
offseason.
about the Kings, Finn.
Yeah, I mean Dennis Schroeder is the most pointless move of all time.
Very.
Yeah, there's really nothing going on there anymore, and I feel
Yeah.
bad for Kings fans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It
That's
it
not
was
flying
it
under the
was
radar.
looking promising with Sabonis and Fox, but
Mm-hmm. Not flying under the radar. That is absolutely crashing and burning under the radar.
didn't they give up on Devin Carter already too? I swear they shipped him out as well.
No, he's around, but
He's still around? Okay.
yeah.
His days are numbered.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Josh, for leaving this off on a Sacramento Kings take. No, nobody likes
Sour notes.
that. But to be honest, yeah, lighting the beam was a good era of the Sacramento Kings. It was a fun team, but yeah, thanks to the knowledge from Josh Alderman, they are crashing and they are burning hard. And Domantas Sabonis does not have a lot of time left, so we'll see where the Sacramento Kings goes. We'll see where the New Orleans Pelicans go. We'll see where the Boston Celtics go. We'll see where the entire league goes when the NBA starts up in October. That is all the time we have for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode and are caught up on where the league is heading to after the offseason. We ask that whether you agree or disagree to join the conversation in the comments on X at ShutterSportsM or on Instagram at ShutterSportsMedia. I've been your host, Cam Stirling, joined by Josh Alderman and Finn Noel. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.